You turn in your King James Bible to 1 Timothy chapter 6. We're going to talk today about uncertain riches. It's a very important study in light of what all is going on with the economy and everything else, what has been going on with the economy for a long time. 1 Timothy chapter 6, beginning in verse 6 and reading down to verse 12. But godliness with contentment is great gain, spiritual wealth, in other words. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. We're talking about that as we continue. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things, and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Fight the good fight of faith, lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses. Okay, now jump down to verse 17, same chapter. Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches. Get back to that. But in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy, that they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate, laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. All right. We're going to go through the scriptures, and then I'm going to get into some of the secular stuff here to talk about. Ecclesiastes chapter 10. You say, well, then it's all about just we have to, just take a vow of poverty, and we can't have money and whatever else. No. Notice that in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, it says, charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches. It's not a shame, it's not a sin, so to speak, to be rich, to have money. There's no sin in that. But you have to be careful about those uncertain riches. And there's a reason to have money. We'll talk about that here in Ecclesiastes chapter 10. Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 19. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. I am one that would love to be able to go to some place or do something where money is not even a necessity. I could just, go out in the middle of nowhere and, just as long as there's berries growing on the trees and animals that can be shot and hunted for, and I can make clothing out of their skins and eat the meat and go fishing and trapping, and I'd love to be able to do that and just survive on almost no money at all. We have done some of that. Not on the very high level, but we have certainly lived off grid and lived very cheaply. But the thing that you discover after a while is that money answereth all matters. If I want to have a worldwide ministry, then I need to spend money, and I need to have money coming in. That's just the way it is. And the more money I have coming in, the more I can work out. I'd love to be able to have 100 employees in a multi-million-dollar industry, or not industry, but a ministry that would be like an industry, because we're printing so many books and getting books out there and whatever else. I'd love to be able to do that. I'd love to have a Bible publishing company. I'd love to have, tract ministry. I'd like to have a big video ministry, and I'd love to have all of that stuff. You say, why don't you? Because I don't have that kind of money. Plain and simple. If God made me a billionaire, I'd use it for His glory. I have no desire to go and have a vacation home in Tuscany or something and drive around in a Rolls Royce. That doesn't even appeal to me. Oh, I'd like to have a yacht and a private jet, and don't want anything to do with that stuff. Quite honestly, I don't. I think it's ridiculous. You get a bunch of rich nonsense stuff like that, well, then you always have to worry about, somebody's going to come and steal it, or it's out in the parking lot and somebody's going to key it or something like that. I've had vehicles keyed. They walk past, they take their key, and they scratch the paint on your vehicle. I've had that happen to me in the past. So if I had some really, exotic Lamborghini or, other big vehicle, really expensive thing, I'd be worried sick about it. I don't want to have that kind of baggage on me or anything else. I'd like to have more money so I can do more for the Lord. Now, is there some kind of a prophecy in the end times about some huge, big Bible-believing ministry that turns a lot of people to the Lord? Well, I don't know. There are a lot that get saved, a great multitude that gets saved in the time of Jacob's trouble. But to say there has to be a Bible-believing ministry there to kind of point them in that direction, I don't really know. I think it's going to be more the events of the book of Revelation and the two witnesses that are getting that great multitude saved. Now, we can leave a testimony behind that can go into the time of Jacob's trouble, and they'll say, hey, I know why that guy got caught up. That was what they called the rapture, the resurrection of the body of Christ. Yeah, that's there. But so I can't say that, I need to make this multi-million-dollar ministry or something like that. It's not really prophesied. Just trying to say that. But the fact is, money answereth all matters. And this stuff behind me here, all these books, a lot of this here, I purchased these. Some of these Bibles here were sent to me. Some I purchased. A lot of this stuff that's behind me, I purchased all of these. The Ruckman commentaries, I purchased a lot of these things. That was a very nice gift somebody sent to me. Somebody sent me this little menorah thing here, the 7 golden candlesticks. A lot of things are sent to me that cost people money, so that I can take what they've sent to me and I can say, hey, I can answer your question from this book that this brother sent to me and this book that sister sent to me, and I can show you, little things that you can do, craft type of stuff that you can do with your hands, because that was sent to me. Money answereth all matters. You have to have money in order to make things happen. That's what Ecclesiastes 10:19 is saying. Now let's go back to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 6. I'm going to give you some financial advice. All these guys talk about the economy and they always say, I can't give you financial advice. Well, I'm going to. I'm going to give you the best financial advice that none of those guys have the guts to say. Any of the big financial advisors out there that make videos on YouTube or on whatever, have their own websites, and I'm going to give you some advice that they won't give you. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's something that I've learned over the years. The more physical assets I attain, the more things I buy and whatever else, the more physical wealth I have, which we'll talk about that, the more my heart starts to go to that, the more I think about it. That's why it's important to always remember we should be laying up our treasures. The vast majority of our wealth should be in heaven. Okay? Money answereth all matters. There's some things that you have to have down here in this life. There's no sin in that. All right? Just don't trust in uncertain riches. The certain riches that you can trust in are the ones that are laid up in heaven. And finally, let's go to James chapter 5. So you say, what was the financial advice? Lay up treasures in heaven. Do things for the Lord so that nobody can take it away. You don't have to worry about a banker holiday or run on the bank or a bail-in or financial collapse or whatever else. You lay up treasures in heaven. Give to ministries. You go out and you preach on the street, or you go out and you give out tracts. You witness to people. You live righteously. You give, with the Lord's help, you get victory over sin. All those types of things. You're laying up treasures in heaven. Nobody can come in and steal that. And no, international banksters can come and mess with that stuff. But let's look here, James chapter 5. And this one is where we're going to end the scriptural part of this, and then we're going to get into some of the physical. James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Prophesying into the future time of Jacob's trouble. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Like a lot of these guys are doing. we'll talk about this. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. When you get right down to it, in order for you to gain wealth, somebody else has to work hard, or somebody else has to suffer on this earth. It's just that simple. I'm going to invest in the stock market and thing. I'm going to make the right stock options and buy this and buy that. Okay, what are you doing? Well, by helping one company come up, you're helping another company go down. You're destroying their competitors. You're putting somebody out of work, you see. You get into a lot of this stuff of how to get rich, be it through debt-based stuff, sort of the Robert Kiyosaki guy, the rich dad, poor dad type of method, where you go and you use debt to build wealth. You do that, well, that's kind of a corrupt system. Again, you get into some of the stock market stuff, it's a form of gambling. But that's what people will do. And if you really want to get really rich, then you really have to understand the thing of buying and selling at the right time. You buy when there's a bear market is when you want to buy, and you sell when it's bull. So the bull, the horns go up, the bear claws go down. If you remember, that's an easy way. I heard it explained by an economist, and I thought, I can remember that. The bear market is when it's coming down. The bull is when things are getting better. So I'll give you an example. Okay, the airlines. The market for airlines was pretty good before September the 11th of 2001. But there was some insider trading, and all of a sudden all these guys are selling their stock of Boeing and, American Airlines and United Airlines and all these other airlines. These guys are selling their stock. And it's out there, and people are saying, hey, it's a really good market right now, which it appeared to be. What they didn't understand was there was going to be coming a crash, as in crashing into buildings, September the 11th. So these guys sold their stocks. People went out and they bought them at an inflated price, and then all of a sudden, boom, boom, there go the towers down with explosives and everything. Controlled demolition is what they did. They didn't fall as a result of the airplanes. They were designed to take multiple hits from airplanes, but that's another issue. Buildings come down, kaboom, kaboom, and all of a sudden, nobody can fly. Sorry, no flights. And what happened to the stock of the airlines? Down it went. And all these people that had come in and bought up the stocks in the airlines, now they're saying, oh no, I'm losing everything, I have to sell it. But they're not selling it for what they bought it for. They're selling it for much cheaper. And so the original guys can come back in, the original bankers and things, and they can say, oh, hey, we'll buy it back. We can't give you as much because, hey, we're taking a loss here. I mean, we're buying some bad stock from you. See what they did? It's insider trading. It's exactly what happened. They bought the stocks back at a very low price, and then all of a sudden the airports were opened up again and everything was fine. And oh, we're making lots of money again. And these guys do this all the time, right? That's why James chapter 5 is condemning them. And why are they doing this? Oh, I don't know, probably so that they can buy a deep underground military base where they can stock it with food and water and all this other stuff to survive what's coming, and to fulfill Revelation chapter 6, where the rich men are down in the dens and the caves and calling for the rocks to fall on them to hide themselves from the Lamb, from Jesus Christ. That's exactly why they're doing it. But a big thing that you'll see is the thing of gold and silver coin. And people will say that that's God's money and everything else. Well, we're going to talk about that. But I'm going to separate this into two different types of physical wealth on the earth. Okay, we've already seen from the scriptures, Matthew chapter 6, that laying up treasures in heaven is something that it can't be touched. Right? You lay up treasures in heaven, you work for the Lord, you do things for the Lord, it's secure. Nobody's messing with it. So we're not talking about, when I say there's only two types of wealth on the earth. Well, understand what I'm saying. Physical type of wealth that you need. Money answereth with all matters. Okay, that's what I'm talking about for the rest of the study. The treasures that are laid up in heaven, that is wealth that you have technically. I thank the Lord for the wealth that He's given me over the years of all the people whose lives have been changed by this ministry. Praise the Lord for that. But I'm not talking about that for the rest of the study. Okay, just to make it very clear. All right, so first of all, we have physical assets. Secondly, we will be talking about digital assets. Okay, and you can take this thing and make it a lot bigger and whatever else, but I'm trying to keep this simple. Physical assets, there's an old saying, if you can't hold it, or if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Okay, just give you an example here. I don't have my wallet with me right now, but just trying to think here if I have a coin around. I don't think I have any right here, but I'll just use this sword as an example. Okay, this sword cost a few $100s of, I shouldn't say a few hundred, probably a little over $100 for this sword. Now, this isn't a sword stock. I don't own you have one Italian longsword stock. Congratulations. No, I actually can hold it in my hands. It's not out there in the yard with a free sign on it or something, or I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the state of Maine, or no, I actually am holding it in my hands. Okay, that's physical. Now, with money, if I have, get that thing back in there. If I have a $20 bill, we'll say, okay, that is physical. We'll talk about cash here in just a minute, but a $20 bill is physical. You take it into the bank, they don't take your cash and stick it in a special little box with your name on it, right? The bank puts it back into their system and then they spend it. They invest it into the stock market. A lot of times they lose all your money, technically speaking, but see, on the computer it's still there. It's just digital. And if you don't believe me, go in and say, I want all my money right away. They'll panic if you have thousands of dollars in your bank. You're going to have to give us a little bit of time, sir. Could you come back in a few days? They don't have your money. They're spending it. Fractional reserve banking. They keep a fraction of your money in reserve. Right? I'm going to try to make this whole thing as simple as I can. And please do not think for 1 minute that I'm an expert, because I'm not. Not at all. All right? I'm still a student in this whole thing, but the Lord has shown me a lot of things over the years with this. So physical wealth is something that you can hold. It's tangible. You have it, you control it. That's one of the reasons why gold and silver coins are so popular with people, because it's physical wealth. Since the very beginning, you go back to the book of Genesis, there's gold being mentioned in things. Early part of the book of Genesis. It's there. All through the Bible, gold and silver and precious stones. Gold, silver, those are very precious metals. It's something that's all throughout time, all throughout the Bible. That's true. But gold can be manipulated. The price of gold and silver is currently being manipulated, and it has been for years. When we first moved to Maine, I had been collecting a lot of silver, not as much gold because I couldn't afford it. I had some little 1/10 ounce gold coins that I would buy occasionally. But we sold everything to be able to buy our home. And the reason I was into gold and silver, I was a little bit into the patriotic thing and whatever, and I was falling for a lot of the gold and silver, propaganda that they put out, that this is just going to be worth thousands of dollars an ounce someday. And which I don't think it's ever going to get to that, because you read James chapter 5. I'll get into the whole thing of the gold and silver here as we continue, but I sold all the gold and silver that we had, all the coins that we had. And at the time it was about $48 an ounce, I think, for it's $46 an ounce for silver. It did go up to 48, and then it just crashed. And they've kept it down since then. But I remember even at $46 an ounce for silver, the guy at the coin dealership, he said, this is so ridiculous, the manipulation. It's supposed to be much higher than this. And I have no idea. I mean, gold should probably be a couple thousand an ounce, and silver maybe 100 or 200 an ounce, whatever else. But they can manipulate it. And there have been plenty of stories where guys at the IMF or International Monetary Fund or wherever, they will artificially drive the price of gold and silver down because it's too big of a competitive thing with their digital currencies. So in James chapter 5, there's a very clear prophecy that rich men are oppressing the poor. They're doing all kinds of things. Why? So that they can stock up gold and silver for the last days. That's what they're doing, right? So I'll be saying a lot more about gold and silver. But there's other precious metals as well. Platinum, palladium, some other things there too that are precious. Copper would be considered a semi-precious, kind of on the lower end of the scale metal. But other examples of physical assets. Vehicles. Obviously a vehicle is an asset. Some of them, you drive them off the lot and they lose all kinds of money and value. There are classic vintage vehicles that actually will bottom out in terms of losing value, and they actually start to climb back up again. Classic cars that are very popular and whatever else. You'll see that if you keep them in good shape. Land, real estate, be it houses or actual property, whatever else. Houses on land or just vacant lots. That's another way of having physical assets. And it's a good thing. I mean, if you have a lot of timber on your land, there's money in that. Those are things that you can have that are wise investments. Livestock, cattle, sheep, chickens, ducks, geese, pigs, whatever that you have, swine in other words with pigs, those are all good investments. Again, that means that you're going to be eating. Okay, if you have some livestock, that you can always kill them and eat them if the market goes down or whatever else. That's a really good investment. Again, it's a physical asset. It's a mark of wealth. And we're not going to go there for sake of time, but you go back to the Old Testament and you have Abraham. He was very rich in cattle, the Bible talks about. He had physical assets, and it lists all the physical assets that he had. And the way it works is you raise these cattle and they do quite well. You take them and you sell them to other people and you say, I'd like to sell you the beef here that I have. It's really good grass-fed meat and everything. And they say, oh boy, we'd like to have that. Hey, we have a gold mine. Would you like to trade some gold for your cattle? Yes, sure, I'll sell you some. And you get some gold, and you say, well, you'd like all this beef. That's not quite enough gold there. And they say, well, we have some rubies and we have some diamonds over here and we have some this and that, some precious stones. Okay, I'll take some of those and some of that and whatever. That's how they did it in the ancient world. Okay? It was physical wealth, in other words, that they had. And Abraham had a lot of physical wealth. Another thing would be antiques and art. But that's a little bit iffy because you might have some antiques and the market kind of goes away and it's not really worth as much anymore because there's some demand there and whatever. And I have a priceless painting and everything else. Yeah, but you have to have somebody with a lot of money to buy that priceless painting, so that's iffy. Again, this coin dealer that I used to know, he had antiques and art and coins, precious metal coins, and he said that the antique market and the art market at the time, which would have been 2013, and he said that back then he said it was just tanking, and now it's even worse. Who wants antiques and art? That doesn't really mean anything to some people. Would still be interested, but as far as a bigger market, not so much so. Guns. Just say it. I mean, there are guys with gun collections, and their collections are worth, tens of thousands of dollars. I've seen, literally knew a guy when I was in Pennsylvania, and he had an old handmade musket, like a flintlock, and it was a double barrel, over-under double barrel, all original. I think it was only one of maybe 10 that were made, and he took it in. It was all engraved and everything else, beautiful, figured walnut stock and brass, butt plate goes against your shoulder there, and the brass trigger guard, and just a work of art, beautiful gun. And he took it to have it appraised. It was worth $250,000. Yeah. So don't think I'm just messing around and saying, oh, you're some, hillbilly redneck that thinks his guns are part of a big investment. Well, there are some that are very worth a lot of money. Okay. And I heard a guy say the one time, he said, He said, I believe in I believe in investing in stocks. Stocks. Um, yeah. So, um, and semi-precious metals like copper and lead and brass. But there is money in that. And of course, you can go down through anything at all that has resale value. Okay, I can't say over here, here's an old T-shirt that is starting to tear, and I need to repair some of the holes in my old work shirt here. I think this is worth good money. I have a huge collection of old worn out work shirts. There's no wealth in that. Okay, um, you have uh, books. We have a very huge collection of books. I mean, many thousands of dollars worth of books. I don't even know. Some of the books we've bought over the years, were literally a couple $100 each. For rare, hard to find out of print books, you can spend a lot of money on a library. So that's another thing of wealth. But see, again, you buy books. Oh, I can go out and I can trade a commentary here for a loaf of bread or something. Well, I don't think so. Probably not. There are some things that have value to them, but you have to find somebody to be able to buy those. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're rich with it. Now let me talk about cash. Cash is physical. That is true. You can take a big roll of cash and you can go buy things with it. But cash is fraudulent. Okay, that's very important to understand. Cash is not supposed to be there. The Constitution here in America stipulates that nothing but gold and silver coins are supposed to be used in payment of debts, both public and private. We weren't supposed to have cash. Why? Because cash can be created. I mean, what is the difference expense-wise in creating a $100 bill or a $1 bill? It's the same amount of ink, it's the same amount of paper. Just one is supposedly backed by $100 of gold or silver, and the other is, $1, which is nonsense. They're lying, and they just keep on printing more money. That's why you understand inflation. Again, you go back to the early 1900s, you can buy a bunch of groceries for 25 cents. Well, yeah, why? Well, because the quarter was silver back then, about 90% silver. So, you see, but inflation now 25 cents can't even buy you a stick of gum probably anymore. What happened? They keep printing more paper. And you look into the thing of Zimbabwe. I don't know if I have that thing here. Let me check. That wouldn't be in that one. But Zimbabwe, they printed up, trillions of dollars, and there's people carrying around $100 trillion bills. Worthless. Worthless. And what were the people doing? They were going out into the streams and they were actually panning for gold to try to be able to get real wealth there that they could trade for things. And who did really well in that economy? The people that had physical assets, like the farmers that have the livestock and everything else. You see. Again, understand physical wealth. All right. Cash, it's really not worth the paper it's printed on, and the problem with cash is it can be inflated, and then you're left with stuff, and then they can eventually just pull the plug on the cash and say not worth anything. You can go out and you can get a Confederate dollar bill or something, and go to the store and say, I'd like to buy some groceries. They say, sorry, I can't accept that. Yeah, but you could a couple hundred years ago. Well, I shouldn't say a couple hundred, but before the Confederate States fell, you could use that. That's not good anymore. Okay? So, and there's a lot more we could say about physical assets, but I'll say some other points here, but I want to talk about digital assets here now, because this is where obviously we can see this being formed. Okay, digital asset number one is money in the bank. You have money in the bank, you have your little debit card, your little ATM card, and whatever else, and you go around. Most people use those when they're going to buy groceries because, well, you might spend $200 or $300 if you're getting a whole lot of groceries, and carrying that much cash around with you, you might have a couple places to shop. You might spend $500 or $600. Well, that's a lot of cash to carry around. So most people just use their debit card. All right, but what is it? As I said earlier, there isn't some little box at the bank with, you have $2,000 in the bank. There's not $2,100 bills sitting there in the little box in the bank. And they look and they see that it comes across the computer that you spent, $200 or something on groceries. And the bank goes to your little box and they open it up and they pull out two $100 bills and they put it in a little envelope and send it to the grocery store. It doesn't happen that way. It's all completely digital. All right. And there's a number of different things where in the past there have been countries. Argentina went through this. They had a banker holiday. Okay, what's that? You can't come into the bank right now. And this is already going on. There's already banks, I'm hearing reports of this going on where banks say, sorry, we're closed right now. We have some issues that we need to do and whatever else, but it's my money. I need my money out. I'm sorry to inconvenience you, but you can't come in right now. There's smaller versions of banker holidays going on in America right now, bigger ones in other countries. You can't come in and get your money. That's a banker holiday. I can't think of the other one there, but there's a bail-in, which is they're now passed legislation. I don't know if it's in all countries or just America or whatever, but there's a banker bail-in where they basically say, hey, the bank is in trouble, so you are you're not here as we're here to serve you. No, actually, we're holding your money, so actually you owe us. So if the bank is in trouble, we're going to use your money to bail ourselves out. We don't want the bank to close, so we have to take your money. That's called a bail-in, and yes, it is legal. Again, the Glass-Steagall Act was overthrown under the Clinton administration back in the 1990s. The Glass-Steagall Act was put in place after the Great Depression to protect people's money, because the money they're supposed to have so much money in the bank. But when it was repealed in the 1990s, now the bank can spend pretty much all of it. And that's why if you go in and you say, hey, I need, $6,000, $7,000, they'll, you have this many people here, a couple hundred people at your bank, and you can't give me $6,000 in cash? Oh, well, sorry, sir. Could you come back tomorrow? I've actually had that happen. When we were moving up from Pennsylvania to Maine here, I remember I went in and I said, I forget how much money I had. It was probably, I think, right around $6,000 to $7,000. At the time that we had saved up, I'd been selling things and putting it into the bank, the safe place to put my money, so that we could make the move and whatever else. I had expenses of the U-Haul truck and moving all of our stuff up there. And I said, I need to take my money out of the bank. I'm going to take it up to Maine. I have closing costs and other stuff like that. I don't want any problems with, switching and having the bank say we didn't recognize this, or and they do all the fraud detection stuff and whatever else because you're in another state spending money. And so I said, I need to withdraw my money. They panicked. And I thought, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, PNC Bank, people are a nightmare to deal with. And they panicked. Big national chain, and they're saying, I don't know if we can come up with $6,000. When there's hundreds of people that banked at this particular branch, and you don't have $6,000 in cash? No, because see, the Glass-Steagall Act, they don't have to have that much money in there anymore. And again, I don't know what it is in your country. A lot of people from other countries there, but the banks don't have the money. Okay, they're spending it. You're basically going into some gambling junkie and saying, here's my money, keep it safe. And they go, oh yes, well thank you sir. You leave and they say, okay, I'd like to put this much on that stock, this much on that stock, and that one. Roll the dice. That's what they're doing. So you have money in the bank. Okay. Another type of digital asset is stocks and bonds. In other words, investments. You put your money into this company and you can, if they do good, then you'll get some dividends back and whatever else. That's another thing. Which, understanding the stock market collapse and whatever else, that's what happened back in 1929. The stock market collapsed, or was collapsed, I should say it that way. And a lot of people lost everything. And that's going to happen again. Kind of had a little bit of it in 2008, but there's a possibility that that could happen again. And I'll say what I mean about that possibility here in a little bit. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. That's another big thing. Now these are supposedly a little bit more safe. They have sort of a cap that they can get to, and they have to be mined. Bitcoin has to be mined and whatever else, so that it can't just run into this big inflationary type of deal. But I heard a story actually of a guy that bought Bitcoin, and he paid a decent amount for it, and the Bitcoin just went and crashed, and his you know Bitcoins were worth almost nothing, and so his computer was breaking down, and he just threw his computer out. And Bitcoin, after his computer was gone, Bitcoin went and just soared and went crazy. And this guy went crazy, actually went out to the dump, and he was looking around for his computer because he still had the Bitcoins on the hard drive, and he thought if I can get them off the hard drive, make a lot of money. So I thought that was an interesting story. But a lot of these guys are getting Bitcoin rich. I've seen some economists on YouTube, and they talk about how to get Bitcoin rich, and you put your money into this thing, and all of a sudden a lot of people, Elon Musk comes along and says, I bought Bitcoin, and everybody says, oh, and they run over and they buy Bitcoin. And then some guy says, oh, I'm selling Bitcoin. Oh, then they quickly sell it, and all this money making stuff. But cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, um, that looks like it's definitely one of the ways of the future. That whole system, which we'll talk more about that as we continue. But here's another one that's a lot more dangerous, and that is a CBDC. What does that stand for? Central Bank Digital Currency. See, you have the Federal Reserve saying we're going to make our own sort of cryptocurrency. You have, I think China said they're making their own cryptocurrency. I think they already have it, I think, actually. But they're getting in on this action of saying this digital currency, where there isn't any kind of a physical thing that you get. You don't get, hey, I'd like to buy 3 Bitcoin, just to use it as an example, and you get a little package in the mail with 3 little coins in it or something. No, it's completely digital, completely online. And obviously, to a thinking man that has common sense, you look at that and say, okay, yeah, that's bad, because somebody could easily delete you or do whatever else. Oh, we're making fail safes. And I mean, again, understand Revelation chapter 13, the mark of the beast. No man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. They could easily just simply say, you worship the beast in his image, or we'll delete your money in the future. Because if all you have wealth-wise is digital currency, you can be deleted like that, and have all your wealth just gone. So, but central bank digital currencies are going to be bad because it can be tied in with the government. See, Bitcoin and a lot of the other cryptocurrencies, they're not really tied into the government openly, but the central bank digital currencies, they will be. And you say, what's the danger of that? Well, they can tie it in, yoke it in with social credit scores, like what's done in communist China. One of the most evil satanic governments on the planet, countries out there, very evil nation. And they do this social credit score thing. So you go along and you're a bad person and whatever else, you speak against the government, well, then your credit score goes way down. If you're not a good citizen, you just keep getting a lower credit score, and all of a sudden you can't have jobs, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. Kind of like the Green Pass, with this COVID stuff. They're already trying to set it up, you see. And if you're a good person, then you get to live in the smart city and just kind of la la la, and you get universal basic income, and you'll hear about that too. If you study economics, this is one of the things that they're proposing for the future. It's just basically perpetual stimulus checks that you get, and you own nothing, and you'll be happy. The Great Reset with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, which is under the Vatican's, supervision. And again, I've proved that. They actually have a papal, not a nuncio, but I can't think of the name of it, enclave or whatever, that they go to the World Economic Forum, and they speak there. So yeah. And the Vatican is involved intimately in international banking too, by the way. So the CBDC thing, really bad idea. And a lot of this digital stuff is an extremely bad idea. And of course, another one that would be there would be some of your online money/banking type of things, where you actually have things like PayPal or Google Money, Google Pay type of things. There's Stripe, and there's a lot of other ones out there too. And it's all digital. Okay? It's a problem. So I'm going to get into a few points now on this issue of the uncertain riches. Okay? Number one, as I said earlier, precious metals are God's system of money. You see it all throughout the Bible, and even in heaven, there's gold and silver and precious stones up there. And at the judgment seat of Christ, we actually are given gold and silver and precious stones, depending on what we've done. Wood, hay, stubble, if you've served the flesh; gold, silver, precious stones, if you've served the Lord. I did a whole study on that. You can hear that study. But the thing of precious metals, it's being manipulated. Now, if they've been manipulating it in the past and they're manipulating it today, don't you think they can manipulate it into the future? You say, yeah, but when the dollar collapses, well, they have to go back to the gold standard. No, they don't, because they have digital currency now. They don't have to go back to the gold standard. And they are coming up with new ideas, and a lot of these economic, International Monetary Fund types of people and big investors, they're trying to come up with the thing of, again, you get into I think it's called Keynesian economics, and you get into Alfred Means Keynes or whatever, and you get into some of that stuff where they're basically saying you can just keep on printing money and just keep on making money, and inflation is just perpetual inflation. Well, there's things that they can do, some of this central bank digital currency stuff and whatever else, where they could actually keep the system going, and you're just going to be perpetually in debt and not ever pay anything off, not ever have any really true assets that you yourself own physically. There are some higher levels of economics and whatever else, some of these bigger investors that I've heard from, watching their videos and listening to their stuff, and they're talking about the possibility of currencies in the future that wouldn't even be subjected to the thing of inflation and whatever else. It's really kind of interesting to see where this thing's going. And again, right now it's just too early to tell what the mark of the beast is going to be. It will be digital, but how will the system come in and whatever else? Again, what is the economy going to be like when you have a lot of the population dying off and their assets are now there to be absorbed by the banks or the government or whatever else? I don't know. The stock market, the first Great Depression, it was crashed in 1929 so that the gold could be stolen in May of 1933. They had to all turn in their gold by May of I think it was May 10th or something of 1933. So the government confiscated the gold back then because it was, too big of a competitor to the dollar and whatever else. So it's hurting the economy. We have to confiscate it, to bring the economy back, And the people did it, okay? And then in 1964, they stopped making silver dimes and silver quarters, silver half dollars. They were making some silver dollars, I think, at that point in time. They might have phased the silver dollars out a little bit earlier than that, but I know peace dollars and Morgan dollars, they were phased out longer, but I'm saying the ones with Dwight D. Eisenhower's head on them, I don't remember when they phased those out in terms of making them in silver, but the point is they got rid of gold in 1933, silver in 1964, and even copper in 1982. The newer copper pennies, if you have a penny that's 1982 or newer, some copper pennies are still old, 1982, but then they switched halfway through. But the newer copper pennies are almost pure zinc. Okay, they have a little bit of copper coating, you can literally take a knife or something and scratch the surface of a newer penny and it'll be silver underneath. Do that to an older penny and scratch it and it'll just be copper. And they actually weigh different. I think the newer one, the older copper pennies weigh, I think, just over 3 grams. The newer ones weigh, I think, 2.5 grams or something like that. So the newer pennies are actually lighter metal. But if you ever see an older copper or a quarter or a dime that's 1964 or older, make sure you keep it because it's worth a lot of money. It's silver. And they also made nickels were made out of silver originally, I think. Or no, they were made out of nickel, but they made them out of silver during World War II because nickel was in higher demand. A little interesting thing there. They also made a steel penny during World War II because they needed the copper. So you can actually see steel war pennies. Very interesting, in the 1940s. I've studied it for a long time. So it's moving forward. What do you do? Again, the body of Christ. What should we do to preserve wealth, to have money answereth all matters? What should we do? What's most important? Well, here's where I think that we should all invest in 5G. You say, what? Huh? Fifth generation, Wi-Fi type of... Oh, no, not that. 5G. Okay? God, gold, ground, grub, and guns. Thought that was pretty good. I saw that actually. I thought I had to include that in the study. Gold, okay, I think some gold, some silver is okay. If you can, because again, a theory that I have is that they might possibly have a point in time where they'll, do something where people are going to be going out and buying a lot of gold and silver. And at that point in time, it would be good to sell your gold and silver because, the market's up really high and then they're going to crash it after that. Just a thought, just a theory. But these rich people that are just hoarding huge amounts of gold and silver, it's going to be useless in the future, according to the book of James, chapter 5. But you say, what about land? Again, I actually heard a economist, and I don't remember if he was from Denmark or Norway, but his name was Wilhelm Middelkoop. I heard him talking the one time, one of the videos I saw of him, and he was talking about that he was dealing with a very wealthy client that had $40 million in the bank, in cash they call it, which is really kind of funny because, I actually posted a comment on some economist's one video and I said, now when he says by cash, are you saying physical cash in your hands or money in the bank? And they said, oh, money in the bank. Because if you have physical cash in your hands, well, then it can burn in a fire, people can break in and steal it and whatever else. So I was always, under the impression that cash means what you physically hold, but no, actually, some of these guys talk about cash, it's money in the bank. So this guy was talking about, this Wilhelm guy, he was talking about a rich client of his had $40 million in cash, meaning in the bank. And this guy was saying to Wilhelm, he was saying, I'm scared. What do I spend this money on? He realized it was uncertain riches, you see. And he realizes, I don't trust putting in the stock market right now because there's some big problems. And Bitcoin, it's up and down and all kinds of stuff. And I'll talk about another problem with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies here in a minute. And he said, I don't want to invest in more land because, see, with land, it's great to have a lot of land. But then the problem is, while having a lot of land is a good thing, there's also money that's going out of your account because of that land. You say, what's that? Property tax. So, oh, I'm a wealthy multi-millionaire. I'm going to have, 20,000 acres of land and I'm going to buy 10 farms and whatever. Okay, fine. You have a lot of physical assets. I know Bill Gates has been buying up a lot of farmland here in America. Okay, there's some wisdom to that, but don't buy too much because then you end up having to pay a lot. A lot is coming out then because of property tax. So land it's good, but not a sure thing. But what about the thing of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin? What's one of the biggest downsides, which I haven't talked about yet? Very simple. It's connected to the grid. So if the grid goes down, you can't get access to your money. Okay? So, you could technically go into a store, some stores perhaps, and actually have physical cash and say, hey, power's out, but I need some food. Can you just, write this down, a receipt or whatever else? I have to have this food. Okay, yeah, sure, we can do that, There's some stores that would probably work with you like that. But you can't come in and pull out your smartphone and say, oh, hey, the grid's down, my phone doesn't work, but I have lots of Bitcoin, And I've been hearing stories, again, of cryptocurrencies. The system crashes and the people can't get their money out. So that's one of the big problems with the whole cryptocurrency thing. And quite frankly, you get into the book of Revelation, halfway through, they're scorched with great heat from heaven, and they're looking up towards God, and they're blaspheming and yelling at him. And I believe it's because their little virtual reality world, the smart city, is broken down. But more so than that, it's not just that they actually can see the real world now for what it truly is. They're out of their artificial world, but they're also realizing that they just lost all their wealth because it'll be completely digital by then. For the people who've taken the mark of the beast and are in the smart cities, it'll be completely digital at that point in time. Something to think about. You might want to have some wealth around that's not digital money in the bank, in other words. All right. Like, what am I talking about? Well, what is true wealth? All right. I believe your health is probably your most valuable asset outside of salvation in the Bible, obviously. Again, we're just talking physical things here. This is what I would say to any lost person. Your health is more important than how much money you have. And I've seen so many people that just destroy themselves, physically destroy themselves, working at some job and whatever else, so that they can save up for retirement and take it easy. I heard a story the one time of this big businessman was walking, along the bay the one day, and he was, walking to some meeting and whatever else, and he has his briefcase with him and his nice suit and tie on, and he sees this fisherman over laying underneath a shade tree, his hat tipped down over his head, and he's laying there like this, taking a nap. And the big city executive, he comes up and he says, "Excuse me," he says, "are you a fisherman?" And the guy looks up at him, he says, "Yes, I am." And the investor says, "Well, why aren't you out fishing?" "I needed a nap." And the businessman said, "Well, see here, if you were out fishing, you could make more money. Time is money, man. You need to get out there. You need to be making more money." And the old fisherman said, "And why do I need more money?" And the businessman said, "Well, so that you can increase the size of your fleet. A little bit of time. If you worked as hard as I do, you'd have 2 boats. And then you work harder, and you'd have 3 boats. And then you'd have 4 boats. And soon you could control this whole bay. It would all be your business." And the fisherman said, "And why would I want that?" And the big businessman said, "Well, so that you could have a lot of money and take it easy. Retire nicely." And the old fisherman said, "That's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking it easy. I work for what I need, and I don't worry about the rest." Don't sacrifice your health for gaining lots of wealth. I know that rhymes and everything. It's catchy, but think about that. Okay, and I have to tell myself that a lot of times. There's a lot of times I'm in here working like crazy and things, and I need to just take some time and say, "Hey, you know what? Let's go fishing. Let's go hiking. Let's take the canoe out sometime," or whatever. I need to do that. So do you. Your health is very important to you. Another thing, producing your own food means less money is needed. Again, another very important thing there. If there's a way that you can produce your own food, one of the biggest things in the future, one of the biggest control mechanisms in the future will be the issue of money, or food, excuse me. Well, money, but food. And this one is very important. I have to stress this one a lot because I'm already seeing it. There are already countries that are saying you don't get to come into the grocery store unless you have the vaccine, unless you wear a face mask, unless you do whatever. We've all seen that, okay? If you're producing your own food, though, you can just say, no thank you, don't need to come into your store right now. When the mandate thing was really bad, we weren't really going to the store very much. We went to a farm in the area that sold some produce and things like that, and we were going there. And we also bought stuff online and did a lot of did a lot of hunting and fishing this past year. This year, 2021, we took the time to make sure we picked a lot of apples on our property, a lot of raspberries, a lot of the other wild edibles that grow on our land. A lot of years I didn't even have time to do that. And it was just kind of, I wish we could pick that stuff, but we, have work to do and just forget it. We'll get to the office and work, and we'll just buy our stuff from the grocery store. Well, that's not really the wisest thing to do. And again, I understand. Well, brother, I can't just go out and spend my time being just living out in the middle of nowhere and whatever else, and getting all my food and farming. And yeah, I understand we can't all do that. Do what you can, though. You see, do whatever you can to make your own source of food and things like that, because that's worth more than money in the bank, in my opinion. Another big thing, which you can look into, there is a coming pension and Social Security crisis. Again, this whole thing is going to implode, especially here in America, where you have people that are getting pensions that are just insane. You know, people working, in the sewage department in New York City, and they're getting a pension of, a couple $100,000 a year or something. It's insane. And again, people that are working currently have to pay for the people's pension that they're getting, and Social Security as well. And so, as less people are working right now, and the youth are not going out and getting jobs, and the industry is all moved over to communist China and other countries like that, there's coming a point in time where the baby boomers are not going to have any money coming from their pension Social Security system. That's another big ticking time bomb here in America, especially. And so what we have coming, there's a lot of guys that are saying stock market crash. It could happen at any time. Some are saying probably not till 2023. They'll just kind of keep this thing going and whatever else. Quite frankly, nobody knows the exact thing of what's going to happen. Not even the guys at the Bilderberger meetings or the World Economic Forum or whatever else, because there's so many different variables right now. How many people will die of the death shot inoculation? We don't know. What will happen when their goods are injected into the economy, when they're all dead and gone, the spoils of war, so to speak. What will happen if there's war? War is a good way to make money. That's what war is always about, by the way. It's about money. If you think it's the good guys fighting the bad guys, well, then you're ignorant of history. They can trigger some big wars coming up. There's a lot of saber rattling right now. Russia threatening the Ukraine, China threatening Taiwan, America threatening Venezuela, and Iran and Iraq and Iran, and there's all these different, they're kind of getting set up for the fighting and whatever else. The South China Sea, China's not supposed to be there, and they're building islands moving towards Australia, and all this different stuff that could happen. What's it going to do to the economy? I don't know. Could they come up with some sort of a currency or whatever else that they wouldn't have to crash the economy? Again, why did they crash the first economy with the Great Depression? Why? Because they wanted to steal people's private reserves of gold. What are they stealing now? A bunch of, we say, well, houses and land that the people don't even own, mostly. A lot of people that have houses and land in this country, it's mortgaged. And I understand why people have mortgages. I get it. Okay? In our current economic bad situation, it's very hard to be able to actually own anything outright. It takes many years to be able to get up into that point. So I'm not trying to make fun of you if you have a mortgage or whatever else. I understand. But what will happen when the stock market crashes? What will happen if we're forced to take digital currency as our only currency and they get rid of cash completely? Again, another big thing, the IRS is trying to pass legislation right now whereby banks would have to report to them if you spend more than $600. $600 or more has to be reported to the IRS. They want to keep track of everything that you do. They don't want people going out and having physical assets. Okay, and if that would be the one lesson I'm trying to get through to you right now, physical assets are better than digital assets. But don't think physical assets can be gold and silver and you'll be fine, and cash you'll be fine, and I can have this and I can have that. When you get right down to it, pretty much anything on this earth is uncertain riches. Okay? Only what you do for Jesus Christ is going to show up at the judgment seat of Christ. Those are the only riches that can't be touched or can't be messed with. I could have 100 head of cattle at our property right now and think I'm going to do really good when things really fall apart. I'll be all right. And I could go back and they all died. Somebody came in and shot them, or some bear came in and killed a bunch of them, or something. Well, not right now because it's winter, but they're hibernating, the bears. But all kinds of things could happen. Oh, I have this valuable art and all these valuable books here, and oh, I'll be all right. I can sell some of my books to eat and everything else. Come back the next day, the office is burned down. Digital currency. I have a lot of money. I've made all the right stock options, and I invested in this and I invested in that, and the stock market crashed. I lost my job. I can't pay my mortgage. I was supposed to have that life insurance policy, and they're not coming through for me. I had health insurance, and all of a sudden I was in an accident, and I went to the hospital. Now the health insurance thing that I was paying into for all those years, they aren't covering my medical bills. Now I'm going to lose everything. You see? It's all uncertain riches. Ultimately, you just have to rely on God. That's the whole thing in terms of taking care of your physical wealth down here. But when you start to lay up treasures in heaven, when you start to serve the Lord with your life, God will make sure that you don't have to worry about the physical down here. Okay? I hope that's been a challenge to you. I actually had a sermon years ago on gold and silver, and I got into all the different references to gold and silver in the Bible, and I had different people say, hey, that was a really good audio sermon that you did. Could you please update that? Well, here you go. This is the updated version of it. Gold and silver is real wealth, but it can be manipulated just like anything else. And it might have real value if you can get into a barter type of system. That's another type of wealth. You know, you meet like-minded people and you say, hey, I don't really have a whole lot of cash right now. Not going to use my digital thing, but if you need apples, I have apples, lots of apples on my property. I'll trade you some of your meat for some of my apples. Yeah, okay, we can work that out. Hey, I can trade you some firewood. Here's some firewood for some of my whatever, or some of your, name it. That's a smart way to do things. And for people that are going to try to get out of the system, the Antichrist system that's being built right now, barter is probably going to be the best option. Okay, so my recommendation to you, my financial advice to you, first and foremost, Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21. Lay up treasures in heaven so that no thief can get in there, no moth can get in there. You know, you buy some, trying to think of the Hudson Bay Company, beautiful king-size wool blanket, $400 or $500 blanket or something like that, and you have this beautiful blanket, and you put it in storage, and all of a sudden you come back and you open up, and there's a whole bunch of holes in it. The moth just corrupted it. They like to eat holes in it if you don't keep it clean and whatever else. That's another thing. But there's all sorts of wealth that you can do, and all of it is corruptible here on the earth. So the only thing that you can really rely on is what you do in heaven. And when you do that, God will keep your finances safe here on the earth. And you invest in the right ministries, you invest in the right tracts, you invest in the right Bibles. Make sure you get King James. Don't mess with the new versions. You do that right things and whatever else, God will make sure that you don't go hungry. God will make sure to take care of you. And be open for the Lord's leading. If you do have some kind of a thing where you lose a job, you lose a home, you lose whatever, because God could be sending you in a new direction. As long as you are doing right, Romans 8:28 will apply to you. All right, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Whatever happens, it will be to your good. Might not appear that way at first, but it will lead in that direction. So be very careful about the issue of uncertain riches. Don't just sit on all kinds of money and I'm just going to retire and God can't provide for me. I have to provide for myself and everything else. It's a real scary thing right now. Just to give you a little interesting story here, kind of ties into this whole thing. My parents, my father just died not even a week ago, and by the way, thank you to everybody out there for your prayers on that. I can feel, I've had my times of mourning and crying and things, but I feel really strong with it, and it's not my strength. There's no way. I'm not strong enough for it. It's the body of Christ that's praying for me. So thank you for that. But talking to my mother, and she said to me, "What do you think we should do about the house?" She said, "Some of my siblings are saying, right now would be the good time to sell the place. The housing market's kind of cooling off a little bit. Probably would be a good thing to sell it," which I agreed. And I said, yes, I think that that's true. And, she has a lot of memories of my dad there and everything else. And it would be good just to get away from that house. It's going to be a real adjustment. They were married for, I think, 60 some years. So be good to just get out of that place was my advice to her. But I got to thinking about that, and I thought, wouldn't that be horrible? She's, in her late 70s now, and she said, I have to get as much as I can for the house because that's going to be the money that I have, the money that I'm going to live on for the rest of my life. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, that'd be terrible if she would sell the place and have the money in the bank, and there'd be a stock market collapse or bank holiday or bail-in or whatever else, and she'd lose everything. I thought, wow, uncertain riches. And it applies to all of us. My money in the bank is no safer than hers. Your money's not safe completely. That's why we have to be creative. We have to think about this stuff. Try to have as many physical assets as you need. Make sure you have plenty of food. Make sure you have access to good, clean water. Make sure you have good clothes. Food and raiment, the Bible says. Let us be there with content. Make sure you take care of those things like that. Make sure you take care of your health. Those are all very important. You can't put a price on your health. All right, another old saying there. So there's a whole lot more I could say on this subject, but I just want to keep it to that. I feel it's a very important issue to discuss. So that is going to be it. Again, thank you to everybody out there for your prayers. Thank you for supporting this ministry, and we will see you in upcoming videos.